Welcome back to the deep dive. I really hope you're ready today because we are tackling something that is, well, it's heavy.
Oh, it is remarkably heavy.
And I don't just mean physically heavy, though the book itself is an absolute doorstop. I mean conceptually massive. We're looking at the British study edition of the Urantia papers. Specifically, we're focusing on the introduction, the foreword, and the first 31 papers.
Right, which is a significant undertaking. To call this material ambitious would be, well, the understatement of the century, I think.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because most of the sources we look at, they try to explain one slice of the pie, maybe a specific historical event or a political theory or, a guide to mindfulness. But this text, it is trying to explain the entire bakery, the flour, the oven, the chef, the whole thing.
That is actually the perfect way to put it. Because reading it, it feels less like a traditional religious scripture and much more like an encyclopedic instruction manual, an instruction manual for the administration of the entire cosmos. It's not just dropping vague aphorisms like, be good to your neighbor. It is saying, here is the exact number of planets in the central universe. Here is the organizational chart for the angels, and here is the physics of spiritual gravity.
And that is the hook. It frames itself as a revelation, but not in the mystical, dreamlike sense we often encounter in ancient texts. It's attempting to unify science, philosophy, and religion into a single, coherent reality.
Right.
It presents the universe not as some chaotic void where life is just a biological accident, but as a flawlessly organized school, a school designed for a very specific purpose, which is the creation of perfection.
But it's a school with a very, very confusing campus map. So I think that's our mission today. We are going to unpack this cosmology, literally map out the universe of universes, it calls it, and figure out where we fit in, because the text gets wildly specific about our cosmic address.
It does. And to understand where we are, we first have to understand the center. If you wanted to send a letter to the absolute center of reality, where does the text say you send it?
You send it to the Isle of Paradise. And honestly, this was the first thing that really stopped me in my tracks. The papers describe paradise not as a state of mind, like nirvana or a fluffy cloud with harps. It describes it as a literal geographic location.
Correct. In the cosmology of the Urantia papers, paradise is the absolute center of all things. It's described as the largest body of organized reality in the universe. But here's the mind-bending part. It exists completely outside of space and time.
Which makes it so hard to wrap your head around. I mean, if it's outside of space, how is it a location? How can it have geography if it doesn't have space?
Think of it as the hub of a wheel. Space and time are the spokes and the rim revolving around it. Paradise itself is stationary. Actually, the text says it is the only motionless thing in existence.
Wow.
It's the dwelling place of the universal Father and the source of all energy and all matter. Everything else in the master universe, all the galaxies, all the stars, and eventually us, revolves around this stationary isle.
So it's the anchor. Okay, so we have the hub. Now let's move outward. Because right around Paradise, there's this VIP section called Havona.
The central universe, yes. The papers describe 1 billion perfect worlds arranged in 7 concentric circuits right around Paradise.
1 billion. That number it feels gratuitous, but in a really cool way.
Well, it communicates scale, but the number isn't even the most important part of Havona. The key distinction here is how these worlds came to be. These worlds didn't evolve.
Right, they were created perfect from day one.
That's the key insight. Havona is the pattern universe. There is no evolution there, no survival of the fittest, no decay, no death. The beings there are perfect from the exact moment of their creation.
Must be nice.
Right. It serves as the standard for everything that comes later. It's the model home that the rest of the cosmic subdivisions are constantly trying to copy.
Which brings us to those subdivisions. Because we definitely do not live in the model home. We live in the fixer-upper way out in the suburbs with the leaky roof.
Far out in the suburbs. Beyond Havona, the text describes the grand universe. This is made up of 7 superuniverses. These are the vast, swirling, evolutionary galaxies that orbit the central system.
And this is where the cosmic address gets really fun for me. We aren't just floating in random space. According to the text, we are in superuniverse number 7.
Orvunton. That's the name given to our superuniverse. And there is a fascinating detail here that usually grounds people who are a bit skeptical of the theology because it connects directly to what we can physically see.
The Milky Way connection.
Yes. The text identifies the Milky Way galaxy, or rather, the Milky Way starry system, as the nucleus of Orvunton.
So when you go out and look up at the Milky Way on a clear night, You aren't just seeing random stars. The papers are saying you're seeing the capital sector of our cosmic government.
Essentially, yes. You are looking at the dense center of our specific super-universe administration. It completely grounds this spiritual hierarchy in astronomical fact.
I love that connection. But let's zoom in even more, because the bureaucracy gets intense. We have the super universe, then it breaks down into major sectors, minor sectors, local universes. It's literally a cosmic zip code.
It is a massive hierarchy of administration. The text is very keen on showing that order prevails everywhere. To give you the full breakdown, we are in the super universe of Orvonton. Inside that, we're in a local universe called Nebadon.
Nebadon, which the text says was created by a Michael son.
Christ Michael, yes. We'll get to the nature of the suns in a minute, but yes, Nebadon is his domain. Inside Nebadon, we are in a system called Satania. And finally, our specific planet, Earth, is referred to as Urantia.
Urantia. And just to prove how unbelievably specific this text gets, and honestly, this is where I started wondering if the authors were just having fun with numbers. There is an actual registry number for our planet.
It's not just fun with numbers, though. It's about conveying the sheer scale of the population. Urantia is planet number 606 in the system of Satania.
Meaning there are over 600 inhabited or inhabitable worlds just in our local system alone.
Exactly. But on Uversa, which is the super universe capital, our registry number is 5,342,482,337,666.
That is a very long number, 5 trillion in change.
It implies a universe of immense, almost incomprehensible population. We are not alone. We are one of trillions. But, and this is a really critical theme of the papers, we are not lost in the shuffle.
Right.
Every single one of those numbers corresponds to a world that is known, monitored, and administered. It's the difference between a chaotic jungle and a managed garden. A jungle is wild and unknown, but a garden has a gardener who knows every single plant.
Okay, so we have the map. Orvonton, Nebadon, Satania, Urantia. We know exactly where we are. Now let's talk about management. Who actually runs this place? The text goes into deep detail about the nature of God, and it splits this into the Trinity. But this felt a little different than the standard Sunday school definition to me. It felt more functional.
It is much more expansive. The papers define the 3 core personalities of deity in terms of their distinct function in reality. First, obviously, you have the universal Father.
The first source and center.
Right. And his distinct quality is love, but technically he is the source of all personality. The text is very specific about this. Gravity comes from paradise, but personality comes directly from the Father. If you are a person, if you have self-consciousness, that is a direct link to him.
Then there is the eternal Son.
The second source. His distinct quality is mercy, but he also controls what the text calls spiritual gravity.
Okay, that was a concept I struggled with a bit. Spiritual gravity. You all know physical gravity mass attracts mass. What on earth is spiritual gravity?
It's the idea that just as the physical universe is held together by physical gravity, the spiritual universe is held together by the eternal Son. Spirit attracts spirit.
Oh, interesting.
It's what actually pulls your soul toward God. It's not just a vague feeling or an emotion. The papers treat it as a fundamental law of the universe, just as rigorous and inescapable as physics.
And then the third member of the Trinity.
The infinite spirit, or the conjoint actor. This is the source of mind. The text calls him the manipulator of energy and mind. If the Father is the idea and the Son is the word, the Spirit is the action.
So we have love, mercy, and mind.
Precisely. And the text is very adamant about one crucial thing. God is a personality. He isn't just a blind force like electricity or the universe.
Because you can't have a relationship with electricity.
Exactly. The papers emphasize that because the Father is a person, we can actually relate to him.
But here's the paradox that I think every religious or spiritually minded person wrestles with, and the text actually addresses it head on. If God is this infinite personality residing at the absolute center of all things on paradise, untold light years away, how does he know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
How is he relevant to me on planet 5 trillion whatever?
This is where we hit one of the most profound and, frankly, radical concepts in all of the Urantia papers, the concept of the thought adjuster.
Also called the mystery monitor.
Yes. The text explains that the universal Father is both transcendent meaning, ruling from paradise, and immanent meaning, literally living inside you.
And when you say living inside you, the text isn't being metaphorical, is it? It's not saying God is in your heart like a warm, fuzzy sentiment.
No, it is highly technical. The thought adjuster is described as a literal fragment of the universal Father. An actual piece of the absolute God dwells within the human mind.
That's a huge concept. A piece of God, like a spark.
The text calls it a pre-personal fragment. It says this spirit lives in your mind and constantly strives to adjust your thoughts, hence the name thought adjuster, to attune them to the divine will. It's the pilot that guides you if you let it, but it never ever forces you. It respects your free will absolutely.
So it's like a GPS that suggests the best route, but fully lets you drive off a cliff if you really insist on it.
That's a very good analogy. And the goal isn't just to listen to the GPS. The ultimate goal is something the papers call fusion.
Right, this was the end game.
Fusion is the destiny of the human soul. The goal of mortal life, according to these papers, is to align your will so perfectly with the will of this inner spirit that the two of you literally become one. You fuse with this fragment of God.
You become a totally new being.
Exactly. You are no longer just a human animal, and the adjuster is no longer just a fragment of God. You become an eternal being, a brand new order of personality that can survive death and travel the universe. It's the ultimate upgrade.
Okay, so that's the goal fusion. But let's look at the starting line for a second. The text has this mandate, quote, "Be you perfect, even as your paradise Father is perfect." That sounds, well, impossible. I can barely keep my desk organized, let alone achieve divine cosmic perfection.
The text completely acknowledges that gap. That's why it distinguishes between Havona perfection, which is created instantly, and evolutionary perfection, which has to be earned. We are evolutionary creatures. We start at the absolute bottom. Animal origin, biological instincts, complete ignorance.
It's the ultimate rags to riches story.
It really is. The universe is presented as a giant school system. The curriculum is ascension. We are supposed to start as animals and graduate as perfect spirits.
So let's talk about the grades in this school. Because death isn't the end, it's just, what, graduation to middle school.
Essentially, yes. The papers describe death merely as a transition. When you die, you wake up on the mansion worlds.
Like the quote, "In my Father's house are many mansions."
The papers take that scripture quite literally. These are architectural worlds, custom-constructed spheres orbiting the capitals of the local systems, where we continue our education. This is where we enter the Urantia life.
Urantia. Okay, that is a very specific Urantia term. We need to unpack that because it comes up constantly in the text.
We tend to think in binary terms, right? Physical or spiritual. You're alive in a physical body, or you're a spiritual ghost. The Urantia papers introduce a middle state called Urantia. It's a reality that bridges the gap.
How does that work?
It has substance, but it's not material in the way earth, rocks, or flesh are. It's responsive to spirit, but it definitely has form.
So it's a vessel for the soul that allows us to interact with a physical-like environment, but without the decay of a biological body.
Right. It's a phase transition state, like an amphibian that can live on land and in water. You progress through these Urantia worlds, correcting the specific defects of your earthly life. If you had a traumatic upbringing, you heal. If you are ignorant of art or science, you learn. You essentially fix the holes in your character until you are truly ready to graduate from the local universe of Nebadon.
And then?
Then you move to the super universe training worlds in Orvonton. Then eventually you reach Havona, those billion perfect worlds. You traverse those, learning directly from the perfect beings who live there, until finally you reach paradise and stand before the Universal Father.
That is a very long commute.
It's an adventure of eons. But it's not just cosmic tourism, it's about deep transformation.
But here is the kicker, and this is the part that really made me sit up. Usually in traditional religion, you get to heaven, you play the harp, you rest, eternal rest. But the papers say when we finish this massive school, we actually get a job.
Yes, you join the mortal core of the finality. And while the full nature of their future work is unrevealed, there is a very provocative hint in the papers regarding the outer space levels.
This is honestly one of the coolest parts of the whole text.
It is incredibly visionary. The text points out that beyond the 7 super universes, the grand universe we just mapped out, there are huge regions of outer space. Massive levels of space that are mobilizing, universes that are currently forming but are entirely uninhabited.
So the 7 super universes are just the inhabited part. They're just the nursery.
Correct. The master universe is so much bigger. The speculation is that we, the finaliters, the evolutionary beings who started as animals and clawed our way all the way to paradise, are being trained to administer these new universes in the future.
So we aren't retiring. We're training for the next expansion phase.
Yeah.
That changes the perspective on earthly struggle quite a bit. It's literal job training.
Precisely. It suggests that God is sharing the creative prerogative with his children. He doesn't just want servants who follow orders, he wants partners. He wants beings who know what it's like to suffer, to learn, and to overcome so they can go out into these new, unformed realms and actually lead.
Now, speaking of servants and partners, we can't ignore the fact that we aren't doing this alone. The papers describe a massive celestial workforce. It's not just God and humans. The universe is teeming with other beings.
It's an incredibly diverse ecosystem of intelligence. We have angels, obviously, but the text categorizes them into very specific orders with highly specific jobs. It's not just wings and harps.
I was really struck by the solitary messengers.
Ah, yes. They are the communication network. They can travel entirely independently of transport mechanisms, moving at incredible speeds, virtually instantaneous to carry messages between the universes. They are the runners of the cosmos.
And they work alone?
Yes. They don't belong to any group organization. They're solitary, dedicated solely to the rapid transmission of information.
And then there were the Seconophim. These sounded like something out of a sci-fi spy thriller. They're called living mirrors.
They are fascinating. They function in the Super-Universe Administration. They are described as living trial balances. They can actually reflect the actual state of affairs of a world or the true character of a person instantly to the rulers.
So you basically can't lie to them.
You cannot. There are specific types like the discerners of spirits and the souls of goodness. When the Ancients of Days, who are the rulers of Orvanton, need to make a judgment, they look into the Seconophim and see the naked, unvarnished truth.
And I also saw power directors mentioned. These guys sound like the actual engineers of the universe.
They are the universal power directors. They manipulate the primal energies of space. They are the ones who actually help formulate matter and control energy. So you have the administration through the angels, the communication via the messengers, the intelligence gathering through the Seconophim, and the physical plant managers, which are the power directors. It's a fully staffed government.
Let's pause on those Ancients of Days you just mentioned. These are the big bosses of our super universe, right?
Yes. There are 3 of them for Orvanton, residing on the capital, Uversa. They're extremely high Trinity origin beings. They have the final authority on judgment. Specifically, they're the only ones who can decree the extinction of a being.
Extinction. That's another major departure from traditional dogma. So no internal hell.
The Urantia papers do not teach eternal torture. They view it as completely incompatible with the God of love.
Right.
However, they also don't teach automatic universal salvation. If a being fundamentally identifies with iniquity, if they consciously and irrevocably reject the divine will, they eventually just cease to exist.
They're treated as if they had never been.
Exactly. It's a universe based on reality. Sin is considered unreality. If you cling to unreality, eventually you and the unreality just dissolve. It's not framed as divine vengeance. It's a cosmic inevitable. It implies a universe of absolute law.
That feels strangely logical. It's about alignment with what is real. And speaking of reality, the papers spend a lot of time defining it. They don't see science and religion as enemies at all.
No, they see them as different lenses for the exact same truth. The text posits that reality is threefold: physical, which is matter, mental, which is mind, and spiritual, which is spirit.
And this brings us to the concept of the cosmic mind.
Yes. The cosmic mind is a gift from the infinite spirit that allows us to perceive these realities. The text says that any sane human mind naturally possesses 3 basic intuitions.
Causation, duty, and worship.
Right. Causation is the domain of science, cause and effect, the mathematical logic of the universe. Duty is the domain of morality, how we treat each other, the recognition of right and wrong. And worship is the religious impulse, the recognition of a creator.
So the core argument is that you can't really separate them. If you were a fully functioning human, you were doing all 3.
Exactly. You can't be a purely scientific being without morality, and you can't be a purely spiritual being without recognizing the physical facts of causation. They are unified in the cosmic mind.
And the text links these to gravity, too, which I found brilliant. We have physical gravity for matter. We have mind gravity holding intellectual beings in the circuit of the infinite spirit. And we have spirit gravity pulling souls to God, like a theological unified field theory.
It creates a massive sense of cohesion. Nothing is separate. Everything is pulled toward the center in its own way.
One thing I want to clarify for everyone listening, because this is often a sticking point with theological texts' evolution. The text is very clear that evolution is real.
Yes. It explicitly says, quote, God made it by evolving it. It describes evolution as the technique of creation. God isn't a magician snapping his fingers to create a finished world. He's a gardener planting seeds and fostering growth over eons. the life carriers, which is another order of beings implanted life here on Earth, but then they let it evolve naturally.
Which totally reframes the struggle of evolution.
Yeah.
The survival of the fittest, the slow, painful progress. It reframes it as necessary.
It frames it as the forge of character. You simply can't create a strong character instantly. It has to be earned through experience. The text uses a phrase essentially saying we are forged between the anvil of justice and the hammer of suffering.
That really reshapes the way we view our everyday problems. If the universe is a school for character, then difficulty isn't a bug in the system, it's a core feature.
Precisely. If life were perfectly easy, if we were created perfect like those Havona beings, we would never develop the spiritual muscles necessary for the long journey ahead. We would never understand mercy because we never needed it. We would never understand courage because we never faced fear.
So we've got this massive map, this intense hierarchy of beings, this grand plan for perfection. What is the bottom line here? Why does this matter to you, the person listening to this, on your commute, dealing with traffic and deadlines and just normal life?
I think the absolute core message of these papers is that the universe is friendly.
Friendly. That feels like a soft word for such a giant, bureaucratic system.
It is, but it's very intentional. Despite the immense vastness, despite the billions of worlds and the high-tech angels and the trillions of miles of space, the text insists that every single personality is known and loved by the Universal Father. It bridges the gap between the infinite and the intimate.
It's that paradox again. The God of the sprawling galaxies is also the God living right in your mind.
Yes, you are a citizen of a cosmos that is organized, purposeful, and actively waiting for you. You aren't an accident. You aren't an orphan in the void. You are a child in a very, very large house.
It really changes the feeling of looking up at the night sky. Instead of feeling small and insignificant like a speck of dust on a rock, you feel like you're just in the kindergarten class of a very prestigious, endless university.
That's a perfect way to put it. You are a kindergartner with a PhD track laid out ahead of you that lasts for eternity.
And it implies that the things we actually value, truth, beauty, goodness, are the only things that are ultimately real. They are the currency that survives the transition of death. Everything else, your bank account, your car, your daily worries, is just temporary scaffolding.
And that brings us right back to that provocative idea of the outer space levels.
Right.
If the entire organized universe we can see is just the training ground, it means our potential is completely limitless. We aren't just meant to be good little citizens. We are meant to be creators. We are meant to eventually do what God does, organize chaos into order. That is the long-term career plan for humanity.
That is a staggering thought to leave you with. It really makes you rethink the purpose of a bad day. It's just a tough class and a very long semester.
A very long semester indeed, but with a guaranteed graduation if you just stick with the program.
Well, there you have it. The Urantia papers, a cosmic construction manual, a geography of the heavens, and a promise that the universe is a lot more organized and a lot friendlier than it looks on the evening news.
It's an open invitation to cosmic citizenship.
An invitation we can all consider. Keep looking up, everyone. And remember, you might just be a finaliter in training. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Until next time.